I wanted to ask you about was something that, I mean, your discussion there around, kind of endless assessment and spurious assessment is something that's very close to our heart. We worked a lot together on what we wanted to do to a family to respond. One of the things I think we still hear a lot from our customers as well is how to approach assessments for children with special educational needs. We're still seeing a lot of LAs who are expecting kind of extensive tracking to prove in order to get access to funding. You recently wrote a piece for the TES kind of exactly about this. Is there anything that you'd like to see change in terms of our approach to assessing children with SEND?
Yeah, I think that we've got a lot of practice development to do in this space, because if we look at how well children with SEND do in the EYFS, there's considerable room for improvement. And I think a lot of people need to hold up their hands and take responsibility for that. And the government has recognised, rightly I think, that the SEND system that we have in this country isn't working well for children. That there's a lot of room for improvement. So when we think about the assessment bit of this, I guess the first thing I'd say is that, like the whole rest of the EYFS, there's far too much emphasis on assessment and not enough emphasis on helping the children to access the mainstream curriculum in the early years setting. What do I mean by that? We have various kind of assessment schedules and next steps, and people are very focused on thinking, okay, so this child can do this, what next? And they're allowing assessment schedules to drive what they do with the children. But the best research we've got tells us that the approach we ought to take is what's called, and I'm sorry for this being a bit jargony, but a structured process of formative assessment. So it's like we've got our early years curriculum, we are aware of where children have got learning strengths and we're celebrating that, and we're also aware of where they've got barriers to learning, and we're thinking, what's the extra help this child needs to overcome that barrier? Do we need to change something about our whole setting to make it easier for the child to learn? So that we're not focused on kind of levels, we're focused on children accessing and learning what we intend all our children to access and learn. And I think that we've got to be much more ambitious about the idea that most kids with SEND can be working towards exactly the same end goals in our curriculum as any other child, but just with the right support. And where children aren't there yet, that we focus on secure learning to help them access that curriculum so they've got every chance of success later on in their schooling. And I've often given the example that, if we are working with a child with an autism spectrum condition and they're not saying many words, that idea of giving them an age-banded assessment, birth to 11 months, or the first stage in a series of stages, is not good, because these kids, they're not communicating like babies. Helping them, the help for their developing communication isn't what you would do for a baby either. It's a completely misleading assessment. And I worry that it also puts a kind of glass ceiling for the child, and that people's expectations lower. Instead, we need to be thinking, what is it that this child is using to communicate? How can we build on that? How can we maybe use visual supports? How can we make sure all the other children can use visual supports? How do we make these areas okay for this child to play in, even though they have some issues with the way we've set it up at the moment? How do we improve it, make it better? So we're always thinking about including the child in a mainstream curriculum, and we're not doing that thing of like applying one-to-one learning support, someone kind of following the child around, supporting them through the day. That's not a good model for children.